Welcome to Conversations with Big Rich. This is an interview-style podcast. These interviewed are all involved in the off-road industry. Being involved, like all of my guests are, is a lifestyle, not just a job. I talk to past, present, and future legends, as well as business owners, employees, media, and land use warriors. Men and women who have found their way into this exciting and addictive lifestyle we call off-road. We discuss their personal history, struggles, successes, and reboots. We dive into what drives them to stay active in off-road. We all hope to shed some light on how to find a path into this world that we live and love and call off-road.
Whether you're crawling the Red Rocks of Moab or hauling your toys to the trail, Maxxis has the tires you can trust for performance and durability. 4 wheels or 2. Maxxis tires are the choice of champions because they know that whether for work or play, for fun or competition, Maxxis tires deliver. Choose Maxxis. Tread victoriously.
Have you seen Foray magazine yet? Foray magazine is a high-quality, well-written, four-wheel drive-focused magazine for the enthusiast market. If you still love the idea of a printed magazine, something to save and read at any time, Foray is the magazine for you. Foray cannot be found in stores, but you can have it delivered to your home or place of business. Visit foraymagazine.com to order your subscription today. On today's episode of Conversations with Big Rich, I'll be speaking with an off-road enthusiast, an old rock crawling judge, a rock crawling spotter, KOH tech guy, right seat navigator, Navy veteran, bicycle racer, husband, and father. You guys have all probably guessed it by now, Chris Ray. Chris, thank you for spending some time and coming on here after work and talking about your life.
Yeah, it's an absolute honor to be asked to do this, Rich. Thank you so much.
So let's jump right in. We go back, well, you just brought it up in our little pre-talk, but we go back like 20 years to the day almost, but we'll get into that. So let's start even earlier than that. Where were you born and raised?
So I'm a SoCal born and raised kid, born in a city called Tarzana, California, which is in the valley, just outside of Los Angeles. And then when I was about 5 years old, we moved to Simi Valley, California. And that's pretty much where I spent the rest of my, life before college.
Simi Valley. That place is has been I don't know if you'd call it notorious, but it's it's well known for a couple of trials that have happened there.
That is correct. Yeah, we and I got to live through that. 1994, the Rodney King trials.
Right.
The police officers that beat him were tried in my city, and that was my first taste of being on lockdown because the entire way in and out was blocked with National Guard.
Yeah, we even shut down our Sears store that I worked for at the time in because of when the riots all started after that. Mm-hmm. It got crazy, and I was in the Bay Area, and we were figuring, everybody was going to be a target. But hey, that's life. So let's go on. Let's go about talking. How old were you when you moved from Tarzana to Simi?
I was 5 years old.
5. So Simi is where you really have memories.
Yeah, it's basically the only thing that I know other than very short memories in Woodland Hills, where I went to church with my family and my grandparents. My grandparents lived there, so that's where I did like a lot of my growing up too.
Okay,
but it's all in that same general vicinity.
So let's talk about those early years. What kind of activities did your family do?
So right when I was 5 years old, I mean, you know me well enough to know my competitive edge. But it was even worse when I was a kid. So I started with T-ball, and my dad had to pull me out of T-ball because I was just too competitive at 5 years old. And so he put me into BMX racing because I couldn't blame anybody but myself if there was a problem. I was the only one on the bike, and I was the only one that had any say of what I did. So I raced bicycles competitively. I played pretty much every sport except for football. Growing up, I played T-ball, I got back into baseball around 6 or 7 and ended up on the all-star team. Played soccer, ended up on a travel team that won all sorts of awards, and raced bicycles until I was about 12 or 13 years old. And then I kind of looked myself in the mirror, and that was like the tail end of the night, or the mid 90s. And that was when we kind of had this drop in BMX racing. Like the sponsors were starting to walk away. We were starting to just not see a lot of money in the sport. And I was like, okay, well, I need to set myself up for college or a job. So maybe BMX isn't the right thing for me. So I transitioned wholeheartedly into soccer at that point, which looking back kind of sucks, because the 3 guys that represented the United States at the 2000 Olympics for BMX were Donnie Robinson, Mikey Day, and one of the other kids that I used to race against and was competitive with. So
yeah, Donnie,
kind of one of those what if moments.
You bring up that name, Donnie Robinson. He used to race up in Napa as well. And
Yep.
I think he might have lived up in there at the time.
That he did.
Yeah, because Little Rich never raced against him, but they were racing at the same time on the same track. And the kid was he was a tiny guy, but man, he flew.
Yep. That was Donnie. Donnie and I were built about the same size. To give a little bit of perspective to those that don't know me, when I entered high school, I was 4'11" and 100 pounds. So you could think about me when I was 9 or 10 years old and racing with Donnie, just how tiny we were. And so, but yeah, we had to be very methodical, and we had to pass based on thinking rather than just raw power, which was what a lot of the kids, especially at 12 and 13, that's part of why I ended up having to get out of the sport, is because, at 9 and 10 years old, everybody's pretty much the same size. But then when you get to 12 and 13 years old, the kids that hit puberty early, like Bubba Harris, that's the third guy. Bubba Harris was the other guy. He blew up to like six foot tall by the time he was 15 years old.
Right.
And I can outsmart somebody on the bike pretty well, but I can't outmuscle somebody that has me by, almost a foot of height and all kinds of weight and everything like that.
Right. That makes sense.
So
you got into soccer and
yep.
Club soccer?
Yeah, I played travel soccer for a team called the SAS Kickers out of Simi Valley for a long time. Basically from 9th grade on, and played high school ball for Royal High School. We went to the quarterfinals of CIF 2 years in a row, and we with the travel team, we were notorious for playing a man down, if not 2 men down, and we would still be competitive in the league for the end of season championship.
Was it just because of injuries or just not that much interest?
So the crap part is travel ball is mostly summer.
Right.
Because especially once you get into the high school ages, because you play travel up until Thanksgiving, and then Thanksgiving to basically April is high school ball. And there's specific rules and regulations that say that you can't do both at the same time. Like if you get caught, it's kind of like that lead into college where like you have to play by their rules, unfortunately.
Right.
And so there was a lot of, missed time there. Yeah, so that was kind of it. And then because it's summer, people going on trips, people going on all sorts of stuff. And so we typically played at least a man down, if not 2.
Yeah, that's why I never got into any of those sports like Little League baseball and that kind of stuff that played through the summer, because I'd rather go out and go water skiing and camping and hiking and that kind of stuff than play sports. But that was my life, at that age.
For both my sister and I, sports were life. Like if we weren't playing sports, we weren't doing it. That was like, I mean, I know it's probably hard to believe. Again, you know me pretty well, but I'm not like the most social person. I'm not really good in social interactions.
Right.
And part of that is because literally if I wasn't at a sports event, I was with my family. I didn't really do a lot of friend things. So those were the only two things. Was like and once I hit about 12 years old or 13 years old and I was full tilt into soccer, I was actually refereeing too. And I became one of the youngest FIFA level 7 referees in the country at the time, and was refereeing college games before I was 14 years old.
Wow.
So again, always into rules, and regulations, and that leads into more of our other conversations.
Yeah, it sure does. So then, what kind of student were you? Were you a good student, or were you always looking out the window?
So I was the mixture of both.
Okay.
4.0 GPA through high school, basically, 1300 plus on the SATs. But I was always the class clown, the guy that didn't have to focus on homework to get good grades. Just kind of was able to get it done. And so I was kind of the bane of the existence for most of my teachers in that regard.
Right. So did that cause troubles? Did you end up in detention often?
No, so it was, I don't know really how to explain it. Like, they all understood that it was just me kind of acting out and trying to not be the kid that always had the answer. Um, and so they kind of let me slide a lot, and especially because I did so good on everything else, tests, and all my homework was done on time and everything like that. Like the little act out or the slide joke or anything like that, they never really had any reason for me to get in detention.
Okay, good. And I guess not playing football because of your size, 5'11", 100 pounds as a freshman, might be a little undersized.
Yeah, so I actually went that, and the reason that I have 4'11" and 100 pounds burned into my memory is because I actually did sign up for football. I wanted to, it was my first time for really being able to play football, and I was super excited because I love um, like playing flag football growing up and everything like that. Before high school, I was always one of the toughest people to get a hold of or tackle. And so anytime we played, like I always loved being running back and I always loved being a wide receiver. Um, and I had good enough hops. Like I had a 36-inch vertical um, before I was a sophomore in high school. Um, and so I could play those positions well. But when I showed up for the physical, the preseason physical for freshman year, I stepped on the scale and the lady started at 150 pounds and started working her way down um, to, from 200 down to 150, because that had been what all the kids before me had been at. And then when she got to 150 pounds, she went, "Oh, that's weird." And so she put the scale, it was back in the day before we had digital scales, put the
Right.
scale to the 100 pounds and then started at 150 and worked her way down from 150 to 100, and the scale still hadn't leveled out. So she put the scale back to 50 pounds and then started working her way up to 100 pounds. And around 98, 99, it started leveling out. And she looked at me and she goes, "You're 100 pounds." And I go, "But the scale." And she says, "If you want to play football, you're 100 pounds." And I said, "Okay."
Let me go out and eat a burger.
Yeah. So, but I had a real good friend by the name of TJ that I'd grown up playing baseball with, and he played for the rival team and the rival high school team. And he was a year older than me. And I was telling him over this, like, in between that physical and the start of Hell Week, I was like, "Oh yeah, I'm excited." And he's like, "Dude, you need to just pull out." I'm like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "You're gonna die." I was like, "What do you mean? You're the same height as me." He's like, "Yeah, but I got 60 pounds on you." And I'm like, "That's fine. They can't tackle me." He's like, "You don't understand. You're used to playing just your local kids. These are going to be the best of the best of the entire city.
Right.
And so they're going to hit you. And when they see little kids like you, their whole goal is, how can I hurt him so that he is slower so that I can catch him next time?"
Yep.
And I said, "Well, I guess I don't want to play football anymore." And that was when I went and signed up for the soccer team.
There you go. Yeah, I can remember I was 5'8" and 168 um, in my freshman year.
Yeah. and you would have been one of the guys that was just trying to absolutely break my neck off, because if you didn't break my neck off, you knew that I was going to run for a touchdown.
True. So then, you're in high school. Are you working at all, or just concentrating on sports in school?
So every weekend I was refereeing soccer matches.
Oh, okay.
And that was my,
And those are
during
paid.
school. Yeah. Well, it's all cash in your pocket.
Nice.
So as a 14-year-old, I'm bringing in $300 every weekend. And then every summer from 7th grade on, in between 7th and 8th grade, I had a job. My parents always instilled a pretty decent work ethic in me. And they always required me, they would provide me the very basics to do whatever I wanted to do. Whether it was BMX, whether it was soccer. If there's a $40 cleat, you get a $40 cleat. If you want an $80 cleat, then you have to find the extra $40.
Right.
So the only way that I could afford to, have the nicer equipment and give myself a competitive advantage that I needed, because I was so small physically, I would have to find ways to come up with that money. And whether that was, saving up all of my birthday money and, 3 or 4 weekends worth of stuff so that I could buy equipment, that's what I did. I didn't have to buy my first car, but I had to pay to get it running, because it had been parked from 94 to 98,
Okay.
99. And so that's when you're 15, 16 years old, $1,000 or, $2,000 is a lot of money to save up so that you can get tires and fuel line and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I bought my first car and put every dollar into it. I wanted there was a Fiat that I wanted, and my dad said, you got the $600? And I said, no. He goes, how much you got? And I go, 300. And he goes, well, my good friend, your Uncle Ken, he said that, he's got that old Volkswagen Bug, and he only wants $300 for it. I'll bet you can get that. So I bought a 54 oval window Volkswagen Bug for $300 back in 1972.
Yeah.
Or 71, 72, something like that. Yeah.
I don't know if you remember, I used to drive my first car out to the events.
What was that?
It was the 1971 Volkswagen Squareback, which was the worst of the worst, because it was an automatic and it was fuel injected. So it was 0 to 60 on an uphill never.
Lord.
But yeah, no, my dad bought that 71 Volkswagen Squareback when he was in college in 1977, put over 300,000 miles on it. It was on its 3rd transmission and 2nd motor when they got it, because he had literally driven it from Denver, Colorado to Miami, where my mom lived, all the way up to Washington, Mount Rushmore. Literally, he did the entire country in that car before I got it. And then he parked it in 94 when he finally bought his first new car.
Wow.
So it needed battery, it needed tires, it needed fuel lines, every single window seal. It had the removable tape deck. So I had to take the tape deck with me everywhere I went in 98, which was really embarrassing. But I had wheels, and when all my other friends in high school were like, hey, you want to go to the movies? I'm like, sure. What time do you want to be there? They're like, oh, I don't know. Hold on. Let me ask my mom. I was able to hop in my car and drive.
Right. Yeah, there was a lot of freedom, man. I tell you what, I was so happy that I had my car about a year before I got my driver's license. So it was like, it was game on, fixing it up and doing what I needed to do so that it was drivable. Yep.
Yeah. I probably spent just as much time on a tow truck as I did behind the wheel in that car, though. I could never keep it running for the life of me. It didn't matter what I did. It would always seem like something that I'd get one thing fixed and the next thing would break. And it was, all right, well, I guess I'm riding my bike for the next week or two until I can get the money from refereeing soccer.
Right. So then you graduate high school.
Yep.
Did you do prom and all that kind of stuff?
Oh, yeah. Our prom was freaking lame. we had to take a Metrolink from Simi Valley down to Anaheim. Took like 3 hours, no partying, no drinking, no nothing. It was the lamest thing ever. And then we did the dance, and then we had to take the Metrolink back, and it was forced. Like you had to check in, check out. Like it was bad. But we had a ton of fun at the event, and then the after parties were tons of fun. Anybody who knows Simi Valley, we all met up at the Del Taco and figured out where we were going to go party, and partied there until that party got broken up. And then we met back at the Del Taco and figured out where the next one was. And that went till like 4 a.m.
Did you party a lot back then, senior year?
So I didn't party a ton. I would go to the parties, but I was always, because I always had soccer, or I like soccer was my life at the time.
Right.
I either had a varsity game, or I had a club game, or I was refereeing at like 7 a.m. every Saturday. So I'd go out and I'd have fun, but like I didn't really drink a ton. I didn't really I tried to be social, but it wasn't what I was when I was in college. We'll put it that way.
Right. It didn't come real easy.
No.
You have a close-knit group of friends?
It was pretty much the soccer team. And then my girlfriend. I had a girlfriend pretty much every year from junior year on. Okay. And so we would hang out with her friends or my friends.
Okay. Did you go cruise your Volkswagen Squareback?
Yeah, I mean, that thing got to do some things that it's not supposed to do. One of the kind of my first foray into off-roading, there was a high school club called Unauthorized. And it was called Unauthorized because in the hills of Simi Valley, it's surrounded by ranchers' property and forestry roads and all that kind of stuff. But it's 100% illegal to go back there. And I don't advocate it now. But at 16, I didn't know any better. And so we used to go back there and go four-wheeling and everything like that. So we had the window stickers and we had the bumper stickers and all that kind of stuff. And I credit one of the kids that was in that group, Luke Ware, with a lot of my love for, well, he's the one that got me into rock crawling in general. Before that, I was just a pre-runner bro from SoCal with the fiberglass fenders and that kind of stuff. So
you had the Volkswagen when we met, you said. So that was after high school, college.
Yep. Yeah. So I tried to go into the Naval Academy.
All right.
And that was my first interaction with a recruiter lying to me. When I was about 9 or 10 years old, I was diagnosed with asthma. And it was later found out that it wasn't asthma, it was allergies to grass. But because I had been prescribed an inhaler, the recruiter told me that I had to fill it out and say that I had asthma. And I was like, but that's an automatic disqualifier for the academy. And he said, no, it's not. You'll be fine. I said, are you sure? Everybody tells me that this is an automatic disqualifier. And he's like, no, it's not. You'll be fine. And so I went through everything, got my letter of recommendation from my congressman, got my SATs up, made sure my grades were good. I got a letter of recommendation from a rear admiral who is number 52 in the entire chain of command for the entire country, write me a letter of recommendation because he was friends with my grandpa. And so I had everything squared away and I was like the perfect candidate. And I got the email that said, or the letter that said, you've been basically, you're not allowed to come because you had asthma. And I went to my recruiter and I was like, what is this? You said it wasn't going to be a problem. He's like, you had asthma? I said, no, I told you this. He's like, well, then why did you put it? And I was just like, you got to be kidding me. So, unfortunately, child of the 90s, born in the 80s, raised in the 90s. If you didn't, and especially in Southern California, if you don't go to college, you're not worth anything. No fault of my parents, no fault of my grandparents, just that was society.
Right.
And so I went to my backup school, which was you're up near your neck of the woods at UC Santa Barbara.
Oh, okay. I went to college in Santa Barbara, but not to UCSB. I lived in Isla Vista for a while and then Goleta, but I went to Brooks Institute of Photography.
Yep.
back in the late 70s, early 80s. Anyway,
Yeah.
so what'd you study?
Mechanical engineering.
Okay.
And I picked that solely because when I did the on-campus like freshman orientation, they had an SAE Mini Baja Bug, and I was like, I can go build off-road cars, and they're like, yeah, and I was like, okay, cool, I want to do that. I'm going to be a mechanical engineer.
So then you get your you got through college?
No,
No?
no. I got through the first 2 years of college,
Okay.
and by get through, I mean I had a GPA. But my last semester that I was still a student, the first go around, I got a 0.94 GPA. I failed. I got a not pass in weightlifting because I was too drunk to go to the final.
Oh, so you succumbed to the Isla Vista curse.
I did. So kind of goes back to what you're talking about, though. Like in high school, I was social, but I had a very, regimented schedule with sports, with school, with parents checking in on me and everything like that. And that was all that I knew. When I got to college and it was fair game, oh, I can be drunk and go to school and not really care. And I'm a good student and I'm smart. I don't need to study for 7 hours to do that. I can do that in an hour and I'll be fine. And that worked for the first semester or first quarter. And then the second quarter, the grades got worse. And the third quarter, grades got even worse. And by the sixth quarter, the UC Santa Barbara dean said, you will never get your degree from this college as long as I am the dean.
Wow.
Yeah. So after that, that summer I was working at a off-road shop in Southern California, owned by a guy by the name of Tim Haight. It was called Bronco Alley. And he built high-end early Broncos and full custom buggies. Anybody that's been in the industry long enough will remember the Barbie Bronco from Texas, owned by a guy by the name, if I remember right, it was Lee Novikov.
Oh yeah, I know Lee.
He was one of the first full-body Bronco buggies other than JR's Fat City Bronco.
Right.
So I was working with him, and through him I got to meet a guy by the name of Rusty, and Rusty invited me out to this event called Carnage for the Cause in 2003, and that was my first real taste of true rock crawling.
So that was the one in Johnson Valley.
Correct. Yeah, that was when the Benders, the Tin Benders, hosted it, and it was the race, teams of 5 up backdoor. Start at the before what used to be the gatekeeper and doesn't exist anymore, and go up both waterfalls and then up the top of the sandhill. And when the last car crosses on the backside of the sandhill, your time was up.
Right, and that was 2003.
Yeah, 2003. And then because of that event, and my interactions on Pirate 4x4 is what led to you and I meeting in person at Boulevard Brawl in 2004.
Right. Okay. Cool.
So, yeah, and then basically between 2004 and 2006, I was floating jobs, kind of living on my dad's couch. And in 2005, I realized that I was going nowhere and I was going to be nothing. So I needed to do something with myself. And because I had a calling to the military previously, I got that same calling again and ended up joining the military. And I went to the U.S. Navy and became a nuclear reactor, not a nuclear reactor operator, but I worked on nuclear reactors that power our aircraft carriers, and I became a chemistry and radiological specialist.
Okay. And you didn't glow at the end of your service?
No, I still don't glow in the dark, unfortunately. I tried.
So what was it like going from partying to naval life?
So the first 6 months of naval life were back to, high school for me. It was regimented school. You had to be in uniform in school at 7 a.m. till 3 p.m. You had after school activities that were required, and it was, back to that same thing. And so even though the nuclear power field is touted as the most difficult academic program in all the military outside of the academies. I excelled there. I was in the top 10% of my class in every class. But as soon as you were past about 6 months, the partying just went back to, it was as bad or worse than college. Because I didn't have rent, I didn't have clothing costs, I didn't have anything. So
except a wad in your pocket.
Yeah, I mean, we our normal Friday night was a $300 bar tab in 2007.
Jesus.
That
rivaled mine back then.
Yeah, and that was every night. And then the beauty of that was I was actually the nuclear power school was in Charleston, and I don't know how the stars aligned, but every 4-day weekend I got happened to be a We Rock event.
Nice.
And so I actually got to come back and do We Rock stuff the entire time that I was on the East Coast.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, because I remember you being at a lot of those events.
Yeah, I still I got to judge Sequatchie.
Oh God.
2 times Angelico. I got to burn a beehive in Roush Creek with Josh. Yeah, and then I got to do the Houston finals too.
Oh, cool. Excellent.
So
then you get get through the military without killing your liver and or getting thrown in the brig. Am I correct on that?
Yeah, okay. I had a couple close calls. That's for sure. One in Thailand, and one in Jacksonville, Florida, but unscathed, no NJPs, no masting, no none of that. So I don't know how it happened, but
so on paper you look like a good boy.
I got out of the military with no STDs, no divorces, no kids, and no jail record. So I don't know how I did that.
You were just smart enough.
Yeah. So, but again, stars aligned, and because I actually got injured while I was on a deployment on the aircraft carrier, and that ended up with me getting put on a limited duty for the last 2 years of my service. Going through a couple surgeries, trying to get it fixed and everything like that, and it never worked. But because of being on limited duty, it allowed me to go to things like the Reno Stampede for Ultra 4 and become the Ultra 4 Chief Tech Inspector.
Okay. I remember that. You had a lot of controversy going on too.
I think there's always controversy. You know, there's never not controversy, but I think that one thing everybody can attest to, whether it was as my time as the lead marshal for We Rock, or whether it was my time as the Chief Tech Inspector, if there was a rule, it was black and white as far as I was concerned, and it didn't matter. It didn't matter whether you were Shannon Campbell or Casey Curry or whatever. You got the same rules applied to you as anybody else.
Right.
And I vividly remember a heated exchange with the Lovell brothers in New Mexico, at the Nationals in Albuquerque in 2009, I believe it was. Shannon Campbell, the way that Shannon Campbell and I met was a cone call in Globe, Arizona, in the first ever We Rock event. And he walked up to me at the next event and said, I don't know if you remember me, but I'm Shannon Campbell. And I said, yeah, I remember you. And he said, well, you were the judge and you called a cone on me, and my spotter made Little Rich overturn it. And I just want you to know that we looked at it and we hit the cone. And so I'm never going to question another one of your calls again.
And Rich overturned it?
Yep.
Oh, that little bastard.
So, well, it was Shannon Campbell's first event, and it was the river running through my course, and I didn't have a secondary judge, and there was a lot of mitigating circumstances, and I don't fault him for it at all. But the going full circle at the Houston Nationals, we're in the shootout with Shannon Campbell, and he's trailing by 6 points. He's got 2 bonus gates left, and he goes and gets 1 bonus gate, and he thinks he got it, and Lance Clifford's a spotter, and they're cheering and hooting and hollering, and they come back down, and I'm like, nope, you hit that cone, you still need 10 more points. and Lance is getting up in my face and everything like that. And Shannon's right there next to me. And he goes, Lance, stop. If Chris called it, it's good. We're going to go do that next cone. And they went and cleared that gate and won it.
Nice. It's good that you have that memory that you can remember all those little instances.
Surprisingly, my memory's not what it used to be.
Get used to that.
Yeah, especially because of all the traumatic brain injuries that I've had. I have probably averaged one concussion. I know for sure I've averaged one concussion with memory loss every year from 2013 to 2020.
Wow.
So I've noticed that things, especially in the last 5 or 6 years, have started to really jumble up, and I forget a lot of the things that I should know.
And how old are you now?
I'm 40.
40. Okay.
Yeah.
And so you're out of the Navy. You're working?
No, after the military, I went back to college.
Okay.
I took it as a personal vendetta. That because the dean told me that I would never get my degree from UC Santa Barbara, I said I'm going to get my degree from UC Santa Barbara.
Nice.
So my last 6 months or a year, I took a couple of classes at a community college up in Bremerton, where I was stationed, and then I applied for reinstatement to UCSB, and I got back in, and I went and got my degree I actually got my degree in September of 2015.
Okay.
So almost a full 15 years from the date that I started.
Hey, you got it.
Yeah, exactly. And if I ever see that dean again, I'll be able to hang my head high and know that, I did what she said I could never do.
There you go. And so after that, you started working.
Yeah. After that, after I graduated, I flew down to Australia for 8 weeks and was a mechanic and pit crew and navigator for Ben Napier.
That's right. Because we saw you down. No. Were you there when we were there?
Yep. You and Shelly came down in your white Land Rover or whatever it was with the rooftop tent, and you guys sat and watched me and Brooksy and Ben and Nick thrash on the cars for the We Rock event that was down there.
Yeah, getting ready for that rock crawl.
Yep. Yeah, so I did that, and then I was getting ready to fly back to the United States, and I was like, hey, I haven't been to the Baja 1000, and the Baja 1000's in like 2 weeks, so I'm going to put a post on Facebook and see who needs help. And JT Taylor called dibs, and so I went down and helped. That was the year that him and Greg Cottrell and Jason Shearer and Mooneyham and that whole crew ran the Class 11. Yep. So I got to be a mobile pit for 300 miles behind the Class 11 Bug in a Razor 800.
So you were idling while they were racing.
Very much so. And then whenever they got a flat, I got out to change it. When they got stuck, we pulled in front of them, and I was the one wading through the waist deep silt to get the strap hooked up, and we'd pull them out. And it was 40 plus hours awake and some of the most fun that I've ever had. And I can't wait to get back down there sometime. Right.
I love Baja.
I did my bachelor party down there. That's how much I love it.
Nice. We, now that I'm on the Off-Road Motorsports Hall of Fame board of directors, I have a feeling that, I might try to make it down to the 1,000 this year and, see what I can do to see if I can help somebody, or if PCI does Weatherman. I've been asked to come along on that, with those guys if they do the Weatherman, and so we'll see. But I have a feeling I'll get down there.
You would be good at the Weatherman. You've got the great radio comms, and even when things get very hot and like chaotic, you always have been nice and calm and able to keep your wits about you.
Oh, I plan on being up there partying. I'll let everybody else run the radio comms. I just want to be up there in the action.
I mean,
although I can't party anymore, alcoholic wise, but.
Oh, okay.
So then, Let's talk about those early years of judging, and
Okay.
besides Houston, and that was Spring, Texas, I guess. Wasn't the pit,
Yeah.
was it? No, it was. Yeah, it was Spring, Texas, along the creek bed there, or whatever it was.
Yep.
All the concrete and the trees and stuff.
hmm
What do you remember most about some of the events?
So I remember in Roush Creek, Shannon Campbell, Nick carried two 12-foot logs
And
that
made the
were like
slide.
6, and he made a grinding, like a skateboard grinding rail, and it was this nasty like 15-foot undercut drop off bonus line, and everybody had avoided it, and then Nick literally comes out of nowhere with these trees on his shoulder and sets them down, and Shannon Campbell drives up to it and literally just grinds down it and never misses a beat.
Man, the East Coasters, I remember that. The East Coasters just came unglued and were just saying it was cheating, that you couldn't do that. And I had to pull a copy of the rules out and write it all to show them right here. It says, yes, you can. And they were
Yep.
just livid. I remember that.
Yep. One of my favorite things, little, check mark or, you know, notch on my bedpost is the fact that Tracy Jordan is still scared of me. Anytime he's on my course. Um, those of you that, or those listening that were around We Rock between 2005 and, 2009 would recognize my voice. Um, as the voice of judging. One of the only people that can be heard over an LS at on full tilt a pipe. 5 minutes remaining, 1 minute remaining, cone. And none of the drivers on my course ever had to worry about, oh, I didn't hear that. So,
And if they claim that, they were lying.
yeah, exactly. So, but like one of my most vivid memories is, that first Globe event. And having to cancel the first day because we literally couldn't get competitors down to the course because there was 40 plus inches of rain.
Yep.
That whole first season it wasn't world extreme rock crawling. It was weather enhanced rock crawling, because even that next event in Moab, we had rain, sun, snow, and sleet all in the same weekend.
Exactly. Sequatchie.
Sequatchie was one of the muddiest events that I've ever been at.
And it was on a hillside.
Yep. And it's also the only time I've ever watched a spotter shoulder check their car.
How many cars were having to winch just to get to the start line?
Every single one on my course.
Yep.
Yeah, every single one had to winch to get past the start gates. And once they got past the start gates, it kind of got into a downhill and they could build some momentum. But that was also so the rule has always been you get a warning, or at least it used to be, you get a warning if your spotter is touching the car. And there was a cone and a tree on a downhill section on that Sequatchie course that I was judging. And Nick Campbell literally shoulder checked Shannon's car at the tire as he's driving. Shannon drops down the course, and Nick's standing right next to the tree. And he literally shoulder checked the tire at just the right time, knocked it around, and made it miss the cone. And he was the only competitor that missed the cone. And I looked at Nick and I said, Nick, that was the dumbest, smartest thing you've ever done that I've ever seen. And he said, what? I said, I saw you shoulder check that car. He said, no, sir, I slipped and just happened to hit the car. And I said, right. Nick, you don't have to worry about it. You get one warning. So I had to give you a warning about it before I can give you any penalties for it. So he kind of smiled and laughed and went on to his next course.
That's pretty awesome.
And then obviously nobody can talk about the early days of We Rock without talking about the Jellicoe Rodeo.
There you go. Enlighten us.
So do you remember when Little Rich caught a Roman candle in his mouth?
Oh yeah, I remember that.
So I have two vivid memories from
Flaming
Jellicoe.
ball in his mouth.
Yep. Flaming. Your Little Rich is one of the few that has ever had fiery balls in his mouth in Jellicoe. So that's vivid memory number one. And vivid memory two, I think I want to say it was the '07, but it had to have been '07. When Eric Miller was competing in the stock class in his gold, yellowish, orangish YJ or Jeep.
Yep.
And he had bashed his front fenders so bad that they were just sharp metal. And he was trying to crawl up on something, and his spotter told him to stop, and he didn't stop, and sliced his spotter's forearm almost right down the road, not across the tracks. And I had to haul ass out on a four-wheeler to get to the ambulance and get a medic on the back of the four-wheeler, because it was going to take him 15 minutes to get down the road to this kid that was potentially going to bleed out.
Right, I remember that. And that's when we made the rule that the body couldn't be all tore up like that.
Yeah, exactly. So
because Eric Miller used to be not so nice to vehicles.
I mean, I don't know if he's still nice to vehicles, but they just look prettier and are more capable than that Jeep that he had back then.
Right.
I tell you what, that kid can frickin' drive. And I call him a kid, but he's only a couple years younger than me.
Right. You're all kids.
Yeah, that is true.
So then, talk about Boulevard. That was kind of a trippy event, being right there on the border. The guy's property was Mexico. The property line went to Mexico. That
was one of my favorite event sites out of every event site that I've ever been into in my life. Like, that event site was just so cool because of the varied terrain and the bushes and everything like that. It was kind of trippy to see Border Patrol chasing people through the event site. But it was my first foray into anything rock crawling. And the reason that I was there is because I answered a call on Pirate 4x4 from Big Rich that said, "I need volunteers. Does anybody know how to announce?" And I said, "Well, I've done plays and I've done live TV and I've done all sorts of other stuff in my life. Sure, I can put a microphone and talk." And we realized very quickly that that was very wrong.
Yeah, I remember. Now you bring that up. You went dead silent.
Yep.
It was like somebody stitched your mouth closed.
100%. And so I was in such shock of seeing everything live that I had only seen on Haulin' or Crawlin' DVDs or in magazines, that I was just like, I can't even think right now, let alone talk. I'm just amazed at this. And so I, like Jeff, and again, this is, full circle how I meet everybody. That was the event that Jeff Knoll was announcing as well. And so Jeff Knoll and I became friends at that event. And he was great at what he did, and I just sucked so badly that it was like, why did we even give this guy a microphone? And we tried 2 more events, and then finally we realized that no, Chris, you're an awesome volunteer and we love having you, but you can't announce. Go judge.
Yeah, I remember that time frame.
I could finally talk.
Yep, that's right. Because I think I even came up one time and said something like, as an announcer, you're supposed to talk.
That was at Donner.
Was it at Donner?
Yeah.
There's not too often. There hasn't been too many times that I've taken volunteers out of the job and found them something else to do.
That was 100% warranted. I was surprised that I made it that long. But at Beatty, Nevada for the Cal Rocks Championship that year, because that was 2004. Before We Rock, we did Boulevard, we did Donner, and we did Cougar Buttes. And I think it was only a three event, and then the Cal Rocks Championships was Beatty, Nevada.
Right.
And that was where I started judging.
So we didn't do Goldendale back then.
You might have. I just might not have been able to get up to that event. I know I did Goldendale in 2005 because I still have a picture of me out partying in the Goldendale area with my Navy delayed entry program hat on. And I know for a fact that was where Bruce Zeller's brother said the best pickup line I've ever heard in my entire life.
Okay, let's hear it.
So you got to remember, if I can't remember what his accent really was, but he was kind of like, hickish. And so I remember him walking up to my friend Deborah and looking at her and going, "Hey, you want to play truck driver?" And she just kind of looks at him all quizzically. And he goes, "Yeah, you back it on up and prepare to take my load." And both me and Deborah looked at him just completely like we had no idea what to say. Because I'm 20 at the time, 21 at the time. Yeah, I'm 21 or 22 at the time. And she's 19, 20 at the time, I think. And we're just like, we have no idea what to say to this guy right now. Because at the time, I didn't know that it was BZ's brother. I just
Right.
thought it was some random dude that walked up to us.
Yeah, Craig. That's
Yeah.
funny. That's funnier now.
Yeah. Bruce BZ was one of my favorite competitors ever, and his old spotter and Nick Campbell going into the gay bar in Jellicoe, Tennessee is another amazing story.
They didn't know it was a gay bar?
No, they didn't. They sat down, got a drink bought for them, and then immediately left.
When George and BZ went over to Australia to compete, they Lance Clifford and Tracy Jordan were telling everybody, all the Australians, that George was gay, was a poofter. And
That's awesome.
he couldn't understand why everybody was coming up to him and acting, kind of different. And
yeah, that's hilarious.
yeah, it was classic.
Oh,
And
yeah,
anybody that didn't know George was extremely well built, cut, very, very, very muscular, and almost a bodybuilder like, bodybuilder-esque. Yeah.
George was he's the guy that they modeled for Greek statues.
Yeah, there you go.
So, yeah, him and Jason Berger would get along really well as far as physical fitness goes.
Right. Absolutely. So then you get into bike racing.
Yeah. So I had the history of BMX, and then when I got out, so while I was in the military, my dad had prostate cancer. He got diagnosed with prostate cancer. And so he started doing a lot of cycling as a way to stay in shape and get basically keep his physical fitness for everything. And then he did fundraisers for the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society. And so I was like, well, I'm going to pick up a bike so that I can ride with my dad, because that's a fantastic way for me to spend time with him. Because you go, like, his bike rides are 3-4 hours.
Wow.
And when I'm in the military, I come home on leave, I get 3 days maybe. And if every day that my dad's gone for 3 hours, like, that kind of defeats the purpose of being able to see my dad. So I'm like, well, I guess I got to get a bike and I got to start riding. And so I got a bike while I was still up in Seattle. And then when I was going to UC Santa Barbara, I started looking it up because I was tired of my 60-year-old dad just beating the crap out of me on this bike. He was so much faster than me, and he's leaving his 30-year-old kid in the dust. And I was like, well, I got to find a club to go ride with so that I can get fit, so that when I go home I can beat my dad up these hills. And found the UC Santa Barbara cycling team and got onto that. And then after a couple of rides, the coach looked at me and was like, hey, you're going to race, right? And I'm like, I'm never going to be one of those spandex wearing, legs shaved cyclists. I'm just here to stay fit so that I can beat my dad. And he just kind of laughed and he said, oh, okay, sure. And sure enough, 3 months later, I was in my first race and I got second place. And I got that first year, I moved up 2 categories. My second year, I won the state championship for the category, or my divisional championship, because there's no true California championship. There's a Northern California and a Southern California,
Okay.
and there's not one combined. So I won the Southern California State Championship, and then I won 4 races consecutively that same year, which, as far as I know, still hasn't really been done. All solo, no teammate, and then I ended up taking 32nd at college nationals, and I went full deep dive into it and tried to get a professional contract. I actually ended up 6th at a Red Bull event in San Antonio out of over 150 competitors.
Wow.
And I got 3rd place in the Pro 1, which is the highest category, in the Southern California Championships in 2016 as well.
Wow. I didn't realize it was that accomplished.
Yeah, I got told by 3 teams in 2016, you're 32 years old. There's no point in us giving you a contract because the money that you're going to want is going to pay for 2 18-year-olds. And I said, yeah, but you could pay me what the 18-year-olds make because I have my military retirement too. And they're like, nope, we don't want somebody that old. And I said, all right, cool. So after I basically told myself when I graduated college, I was like, I'm giving myself 1 year to get a pro contract. If I don't get a pro contract, then I get to go get a job and be a real adult, and go from there. And so I gave it my all. I like I said, I got 3rd place in state championships or divisional championships, and I got 6th place at a Red Bull event. And I still couldn't get a pro contract. So I was like, well, it's time to use my nuclear background and my mechanical engineering degree and go get a real job.
And you did that doing?
So I got into manufacturing.
Okay.
I don't use anything that my degree is in. I don't do calculations of any kind. I don't do aerodynamics or fluid flow or anything. I got into the very practical side of the mechanical engineering, and I basically become a manufacturing engineer and process engineer. One of the titles that I got given for a little while was optimization engineer.
Well, that sounds fancy.
Yeah. So basically what I do really well, and it kind of plays into my navigating too, is I probably have at least some form of OCD, some whatever perfectionist, anal retention, whatever you want to call it. And so I have a very good ability to watch somebody do something, notice every single step of that process, and then be able to say, okay, well, you did 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. What if we did 7 in front of 4 and 5 after 6? And now instead of a process taking 2 hours, it takes an hour. And so when you're in the world of CNC machining or manufacturing of any kind, if you can optimize processes like that, you save companies money and you justify your salary.
Right.
And so I'm pretty good at that. That first company that I worked with was a bearing company, and they produced 4,000-pound bearings for gas plants in Eastern Asia, for Chevron. And when I got a hold of the program, we were able to produce 6 bearings in a 10-hour shift. And by the time that I was done optimizing it, we had 10 bearings in a 10-hour shift.
Oh, very good.
So,
yeah.
And then now I've done 9 facility layouts where I draw the whole thing up in 2D and then basically play Tetris for a couple days and find ways to optimize storage and manufacturing layouts and everything like that. And one of the layouts I did up in Portland, Oregon, increased storage capacity by 60% without touching a single square foot of manufacturing capacity, and basically saved the company about $2 million over 5 years because they didn't have to go lease a new building.
Very good. Very good. So you still doing that type of work now?
Yeah, I actually work for a company called American Security Products. We do gun safes, smart safes, and all that kind of stuff.
Okay.
Um, what I'm what a lot if anybody is in the space knows I'm going for my my Lean and Six Sigma black belt, um, so that I can do Kaizen events and all that kind of stuff. Basically, right now I'm doing a complete facility layout for this place so that we can optimize and minimize our contamination. I've written 50 plus procedures on how we make things and optimize those, develop key process indicators and all that kind of really fancy talk that nobody really cares about.
Okay. And so you're let's talk about being in that right seat and how that all fell into place to where you're one of the guys that people look for as a either to help their program or with downloads, that kind of stuff, or with with actually being in the seat and navigating during the races.
Well, that goes all the way back to 2004 meeting and hanging out with Dave Cole. I was always the broke college kid. I never had my own money. I never had my own rig. So I got to sit in the right seat pretty much exclusively, um, and just take in anything that I could learn about, tire placement and working with re-rock and learning recoveries because, 9 times out of 10, the lead judge for the course was responsible for getting any broken cars off of their course.
Right.
So I got to learn that through WeRock. And then around 2009, 2010, I was down for a New Year's trip, and Ben Napier had just bought the bomber car and was living in Chris Ridgway's van on the lake bed for like 30 days. And Jeff and Dave Cole were testing out the idea of an LCQ and a qualifying course. And so they said, "Hey, Chris, do you want to go ride with Ben and tell him, where the turns are?" And I was like, "I can definitely do that. I've been doing that for the last 7 years here at the Hammers." And it turns out that I didn't know how to tell corners because I didn't understand the zoom on the GPS. I didn't understand the closing distance. I didn't understand the speeds that we were at. So it was a really rude awakening to wrong seat, as I like to call it, wrong seat filling. But then when I got out of the military, I was in kind of a lull between starting college back up, and Ben was getting ready to race Vegas to Reno. And so I said, "Hey, do you need any help?" And he's like, "Yeah, I could use some help prepping." And I was like, "Sweet, I'll come down and prep. I don't care. Anything I can do to work on a race car." And then about 2 days before the event, he said, "Hey, do you still have a helmet and head and neck restraint?" I was like, "I can get one." He said, "Okay, make sure you have it just in case." And then the day that we showed up to second contingencies, he's like, "Hey, go get your helmet and head and neck restraint. I need you to go get your wristband." And so basically, always being the guy that's willing to do something and say yes and help has led me to a lot of really amazing opportunities. So I got to race with him then, and then in 2013 was my first King of the Hammers. I got asked by a competitor to navigate for him, even though I was the chief tech inspector, and I had to clear it with Dave Cole, and he said, "Yeah, that's fine as long as you don't do tech on a 4500 car, and we have other tech inspectors that can do those cars." I said, "Okay, cool." And so I got to race with George Evans that year, and I ended up racing with him for two more years after that. And then just like I said, always being able to say yes and happening to be in the right seat at the right place at the right time. 2013 Glenn Helen, Lauren Healy's in his 2-seat IFS car, and he still has his seat and belts mounted. And I see him lining up for the LCQ, and I say, "Hey, Lauren, we know you're going to smoke everybody in the LCQ, so do you want somebody to sit in the seat with you and sing you songs and keep you company?" And he goes, "Sure. You got a helmet and head and neck restraint?" And I was like, "Well, I do, but I was just kind of joking." And he's like, "Well, I'm not. Go get it." And so literally I ran and stripped naked while I was running to my car, grab my stuff, get it on, and get back into the seat. And I barely got the seatbelts buckled before we started the race. and I got to do the LCQ with him, and I was like, okay, that's cool. Thanks for that amazing ride. I know you got to go take the next race seriously because it's the finals. And he's like, dude, we're starting like 37th of 38. I definitely want somebody in the seat with me. I was like, okay, cool. And so we charged from 37th to third place. So, just being my normal OCD self has always led me to diving in way too deep. And so when I started, I got asked to race with Tony Pellegrino. Well, I didn't get asked to race with Tony Pellegrino. I asked if Tony needed a co-driver drunkenly at a Thanksgiving event. And he called me back 2 weeks later and said, if you're serious, I need a co-driver. And I said, sure. And I didn't really know how serious you could take that wrong seat until that year. His normal navigator is Brian from All German Motorsports.
Oh, yeah.
And that guy is like a professional wrong seat, gets paid to go down to Baja, race class 10s, class 1s, trophy trucks, like epitome of good notes, epitome of everything. And he took me under his wing and showed me what was capable. And that was the first year that I ever had waypoints on a GPS other than what was provided by King of the Hammers. And so when I saw what that was capable of, that next year, when I raced with Jesse Combs, I brought that to the table and said, I know what I can bring to the table. And so that was when I started messing around with waypoints and GPS map editing and everything like that. And now over the last 5+ years, I've kind of become one of the guys that is sought after to say, hey, how do I set up my GPS? How do I edit this? How do I do that? What do you recommend? And I still don't understand why, because I've always thought that I'm just some random guy that's been really lucky to work with amazing teams. I don't think that I have some innate ability that anybody else can't do. It's just that I've been very, very fortunate to work with the different teams that I've been working with, and they've helped me get the finishes and the results that I've gotten.
Cool. Excellent. And let's talk about family. I don't even know if I've met your wife yet. And I've known you for so long. You were like one of my kids, you know?
Yeah, for a long time you were basically a second father, you know, because of how much time we spent on the road going out. I mean, that road trip home from Columbus was not something to write home about. But
was that the trip after nationals?
That was national. That was the first We Rock Nationals in Columbus, Ohio.
Oh, and yeah, I was pissed off that time. But we won't get into that.
Yeah, but no, I was very fortunate. So in this time frame of me not caring about work and just trying to be a professional bike racer and living in my dad's house and being 32 years old and no job, no money, no nothing, this amazingly beautiful redhead who has a master's degree, is a college professor, owns firearms, owns her own race car, owns her own dirt bike, owns her own trucks, and is 7 years younger than me, finds me on a dating website and starts chatting with me. Like, I didn't have to do any pursuing to get that initial conversation.
And I'm probably why it worked.
Probably, because I literally was like, I have nothing to bring to the table. I'm living at home. I'm a professional bike racer with no money. Like, I have nothing to give you. And she was like, but you know how to change your own oil? And none of the guys that I've dated since I got back from South Carolina knows how to do that. And I said, all right, cool. Well, I can change your oil for you. And so we started dating in December of 2015. We moved in together in June of 2016. And then we got engaged on Perfect Day, which, for those that don't know, Perfect Day is June 28th. And it's called Perfect Day because those are the only two perfect numbers in the calendar. And they're called perfect numbers because the sum of their multipliers is the number. So 3 times 2 and 6 times 1 is 6. So 3 plus 2 plus 1 is 6. And the same thing with 28. Okay. And then we got married in 2018. And we had our first daughter in August of 2020, hooray COVID baby. And then we had our second daughter in March of last year.
Very good. Very good.
Yeah. And honestly, like, she is my saving grace. I wouldn't be able to do anything that I do out of King of the Hammers without her. I wouldn't be in the position that I'm in without her, because she was my financial backing while I was racing bikes. She paid the rent. She paid for the food. She did everything. Because
You had to have
she,
brought something to the table besides oil changes.
well, I mean, I can cook real good and I can clean real good.
Hey, you do
So
what you have to do to be a kept man, you know?
exactly. But yeah, like I said, if it wasn't for her and her belief in me, I would not be here today. I wouldn't be having this conversation with you. I honestly don't even know if I'd be alive. There were some really dark days because of the military times and because of everything else that had gone on in my life. She literally brought life back to me and made me think that I had a future.
Well, that's awesome.
So
That's awesome.
yeah, and Avery is turning 4, and I'm getting her on a bike as soon as I can. We went riding last night for the first time. So and Patricia is named after my grandmother. So I get to see my grandmother and her every single day, which is awesome.
That is great. So one last thing. What would be your recommendation to somebody that sits there and watches stuff from home and wants to get involved?
So find a local team and do whatever it takes. It doesn't matter whether it's sweeping. It doesn't matter whether it's doing the nitty gritty grinding, changing tires, filling fuel jugs. The most tedious job is where you have to start. Literally the only reason that I've gotten to the point that I'm at today is because I've never thought that any job was below me. Whether it's, and like a perfect example of that was this year, I got to actually ride in a spec trophy truck, and we're in line for the prologue at King of the Hammers, and the car's in neutral, and we're just kind of pushing it through because there's no point in moving the car forward 15 feet by driving it, and you don't want to leave it idling. And I'm out of the car, and I see the two teammates, like the two pit guys, get out and start pushing the car, and I run over there and I get behind the car and I start pushing the car. And they both looked at me and they're like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "I'm helping you push the car." They're like, "But you're the navigator." And I said, "Yeah, so?" They said, "We haven't seen that before." And I said, "Well, that sucks, because it doesn't matter whether you're the most important person on the team or the least important person on the team. When it comes to being a navigator and being a driver, we can't do what we do without all of the people that do everything else for us.
Right.
From the kid that cuts the zip ties and sweeps them up to the guy that is responsible for rebuilding the motor. Like, those are the people that make my job possible. And so to ever think that you're above doing something like filling a fuel jug or changing a tire or pushing a car, like, that's my one piece of advice, is never feel like you're above those jobs.
Excellent. And with that, I want to say, Chris, thank you so much for spending this time after work and before you get your family time. I know you want to get out there and get your daughter on the bike again tonight. So, but I just want to say thank you so much for all the time that you spent with us over the years. And I wish you all the luck in the world.
I really appreciate that, Rich. And I hope you understand that I truly think that without you and your son taking me under your wing back in 2004 and allowing me to be part of your family and grow and flourish in the Cal Rocks and the We Rock days, that I wouldn't be here today. And I hope you understand how much I appreciate being on this podcast, because like I'm flabbergasted that I even got asked, because you got guys like the McMillans and and the Rod Halls and and all of these different Ormhoff inductees that you could interview, and to take the time out of your day to interview me and ask me my story just really humbles me, and I really appreciate you as a person, and I can't wait till the next time that I get to see you and Shelly.
Well, excellent. Thank you so much. Kind words. Kind words.
Right. Have a fantastic night, Rich.
All right, you too. And you take care and have a great life.
Thank you.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
Well, that's another episode of Conversations with Big Rich. I'd like to thank you all for listening. If you could do us a favor and leave us a review on any podcast service that you happen to be listening on, or send us an email or a text message or a Facebook message, and let me know any ideas that you have, or if there's anybody that you have that you think would be a great guest, please forward the contact information to me so that we can try to get them on. And always remember, live life to the fullest. Enjoying life is a must. Follow your dreams and live life with all the gusto you can. Thank you.